What magic spell am I sharing today? Why, it's our annual Halloween Haunted Gingerbread House Party. This is our 3rd year hosting and the kids absolutely love this one. It has become a magical tradition. Let me tell you a little bit about how this tradition was born. First, it helps to know a little bit about me. Natalie Mayhew, aka Natalie Lafette. I was born in Wellington, New Zealand, and my company is Fern and Maple. In New Zealand, when I was growing up, Halloween wasn't a big thing. It was very American and not really done. That's changed a lot over the years, and you'll now find that people do celebrate Halloween, and it just gets bigger every year. When I moved to the States, I experienced Halloween for the first time, and I loved it. And that love just grew and grew and grew the more I got to know about Halloween. Favorite holiday, well over and above Christmas. I wanted to create, when I had kids, something traditional, something that we could do and share every year. So one of the traditions that I did love about Christmas was gingerbread house making. Okay, now I have this idea. I want to throw a Halloween gingerbread house decorating party. Oh, that's a bit of a mouthful. So how do I start? Well, the desire to have a tradition really drove the design of the party. For me, tradition is, it's a mixture of things. Number one, having that magical moment with your kids, a little bit like putting up the Christmas tree, that magical inspiration. That drove the desire to have a main table that the kids could look at and have a beautiful gingerbread house that was already pre-done, something magical that they could look at and be inspired by. Number two was activity always creates tradition, like doing something together and cherishing those moments and laughing and talking. That was the second part. With a gingerbread house decorating party, the next portion of the design was going to have to be about making a table that worked for the kids and I, or the kids and their friends, to sit there and really get into grabbing things and putting them on their houses. So an activity-based table where they could also have snacks and talk to each other was the second part. So I had number one, designing a focal point. Number two, designing an activity. And the third part, again, driven by tradition, was that capturing memories. So for me, that means photos. Oh, I'm that mom. And I love that ability for a tradition to compare year to year. So here's my daughter Parker when she's like 6, holding the gingerbread house she created, and now she's about to turn 11. Look at the gingerbread house she created now. I love that transitional view of something that's really special to your family. And that created the desire to have a third portion of this party, which was like a little backdrop that the kids could get in front of and display their piece with pride, something beautiful behind them, and they got that picture to take away, and I got my memory captured in full-blown color, and I could look at that over the years. Now we've established the layout. We've got 3 pieces of our party. How do you choose a theme for that? The very first year I went traditional. I just thought haunted house. Purple, black, bats flying out of the house, let's go totally traditional. And for the second year, I wanted to go a little bit more modern, and I saw this beautiful plate from Daydream Society. It was like a peachy color, and it had designs of little witches and things like that on it. So that year I decided to go with a color palette. So first year, all about traditional elements, bats and houses, really focusing on those elements as my key decor pieces, houses, bats. When it came to the second one, it was more about color and making sure that I went with balloons that matched the color, a tablescape that matched the color, a photo area that matched the color. Now this year, on in my third year, I really loving the vintage vibes. I don't know about you guys, but the vintage vibes are cute. I mean, seriously, look at these plates. Oh, adorbs. And I've always wanted to do a vintage theme Halloween. I don't know if you've seen designers like Lisa Kettle. She's actually presenting here at Bewitching Bash. Check her out. They have the most gorgeous vintage designed products, like handcrafted. I've always loved them, haven't done a party with them. So I thought, okay, this year I'm going to go vintage. And lo and behold, this year, I think you'll see so many of the stores have got like that vintage vibe. It started coming out last year, but it's really here in its full glory this year. So there's no shortage of beautiful things to choose from, but what to choose. So let's look at the vintage vibe. Now that's color. It's for the way I look at it, it's very black and white and orange. That's the core palette of a vintage design. And then it's about the graphic, the way things look. For example, on these plates, the faces just have that vintage vibe. There's always ruffles. There's old school hats. There are lots of stars in the designs and patterns. They used to make a big play on patterns, as you can see here, the stripes, the stars, spots. And lastly, it's the characters. Some of the really strong characters you see in vintage are the black cat. You see the ghost face and the skeleton, but the skeleton has got a really interesting design face and he's always kind of moving and dancing. The eyes are always rimmed with multiple circles. So these are the elements I was looking for when I started shopping for my vintage themed Halloween party. Once inspiration hits, the mood board is the next thing I do. This is where I take the ideas that are buzzing around my head and I start to put them into a board that gives me more of a conceptual view of what I'm going to put together. It's the look and feel and the soul of the party. So how do I do this? Where do I go? I usually use Canva and I am collecting images from Pinterest. I'm going into magazines as well. I'm always screenshotting. I don't know about you, but I have a zillion screenshots in my camera roll. And I am looking at different websites. I'm seeing what products are around and they're gonna enhance what I'm coming up with in my brain. Let's take a look at my mood board. As you can see on here, I'm capturing the palette, I'm capturing the patterns we were talking about and the characters. The mood board is a great resource if you're using vendors. If you have a florist, if you are working with a baker. This is something you can send directly to them and they'll understand the creative direction you're heading in. They'll have a better view of the palette and they'll understand how that's coming to be together. Then I start looking at the detailed design. This is a super fun bit because I combine this with shopping. Where do I shop for my supplies? Share my spell book with you. In-person shopping. I always love doing this. And yes, you'll find me as a regular at most of these stores at least once a week, checking out what they've got out there. First, I like to frequent the smaller boutique wand makers. Yep, the smaller party boutiques are more likely where I'm going to find something a little bit more unique that hasn't been seen before, and I have established relationships with them, so I'm talking to them early on and seeing what's coming out for the new year, which is exciting. Let me share those magical wand makers with you. For example, I like to go to the Party Darling, Jollity & Co, My Mind's Eye, Baker's Party Store, Mafette World, Bonjour Fete. These are just a few of those magical wand makers that you can visit. And they have some fantastic ranges and they're always doing packages and deals. And a lot of the times they'll have set up a party theme for you. You can actually shop the theme. So then you're actually getting everything from plates and cups to match. And it takes a little bit more of the design work out of your hands. But if you're like me and you like to mix it up and create a massive party potion, what I like to do is visit them. Then I visit some of the bigger retailers, both online and in store. So you've got Oriental Trading, you have World Market, you have Michael's, and everyone's favorite, Target and the Dollar Tree. I'm visiting these all on a regular basis, and I start shopping a few weeks out, and I have in my head that I'm looking for vintage pieces, things that go in with the overall design and aesthetic that I've come up with. In this case, the vintage look and the classic black, orange, and like a cream-based color with a swing to white. So then I'm going to all the stores and taking a sweep through and seeing what I find. For example, these were found at Target just this week. Online items, okay? And then even things like this from the Dollar Tree. So some of these Etsy designers have some fabulous handcrafted vintage items. So when I'm doing a thing like this, I'm always popping into those. Then I have a few local party stores. There's actually a place called Elephants here in Portland. And while they're a sandwich place, they have a huge area of party gear, and they're always decked out and have vintage Halloween items. So you may have something like that, a surprise little area and a shop around you, to get familiar with your local retailer. So you can shop local as well. And this is where I found these paper chains. How about shopping for a few potion supplies, frog's legs, and newt eyes, if you will? Come on, let's go shopping. After looking online at all my favourite party stores, I'm off to the shops to see what I can find, and I find a lot. Target is just bringing out their range, and look at Michael's. It has everything vintage. They've really nailed it this year, and I'm getting so inspired by my color palette and the characters that I've been thinking about. They're going to work perfectly for vintage, and there's definitely plenty of decor for me to choose from. Everything from plates and cutlery. There's different price ranges. I'm also finding things at Dollar Tree. Definitely picking up some of these items from Target. Now let's see how I'm going to put these things together on my design board. Now that I've done a thorough investigation online and I've been out to all the stores and seen what's available, I start making my selections, shopping, and putting together a design board of how I will put everything together on the table and set up the entire party space. All my essentials are included, and what are they? What are your essential pieces? Think about the table cover or a table runner. Think about the plates. Think about the cutlery. Then you're going to have cups for drinking, and then you're going to have serving dishes or small dishes that are going to hold things that the kids need to work with. And you also might want to consider little mini trays for each of the kids to put their gingerbread houses on, or you could use another paper plate. What are the essentials for a backdrop? Either balloons, something like this, garlands, paper fans. Other essentials, larger items that give the look and feel of a vintage Halloween party. Vessels. Think about crows, pumpkins, and other items that give a vintage vibe that you can add to the overall ambiance of the party. Here's a little tip for you. I start collecting all the items that I am finding and have decided on in these bussing trays, and I collect them there and check in regularly to make sure I don't double purchase. I start looking at the items that the kids are going to use to decorate their gingerbread houses with. Now I like to stay in theme with this so that each house has that vintage vibe. And first I start with my different sprinkle confettis and things that they can add. And these are all from Baker's Party Shop. Fabulous little skull heads, bats and sprinkles, all in the colour palettes that I want. Wilton is also a great supply. And then I look for things like that they'll love. Spiders, candy worms, candy scare mix, eyeballs, laces that look like spiders' webs. Eat, peek, and hide and eat candy. They have some great themes like these little zombie gummy brains and eyeball candy. Kids absolutely love these. They may just eat half of them while they're making their gingerbread houses, but they love them. Then a few specialty items. Then my icing tubes from Baker's Party Store, the cutest. Aren't they the cutest? And the colours that I want, and little stencils that the kids can use to use edible paints on the roofs of their houses. When it comes to the houses themselves, I work with a local baker, Trophy Bakery, Adrian, incredible customizes my gingerbread houses to match my theme. So for this one, she has created them all in a black with orange piping to give them that vintage look. As an alternative to working with a local baker, you can now get in stores these kits, gingerbread house kits for little haunted houses of different types. There's a cottage here, there's a twisted tavern. Now the kids could put these together themselves, or I recommend putting them together in advance. You'll find that way they're just concentrating on decorating and not getting frustrated with putting the walls up. Of course, that differs across age groups. When I started doing this, there were not as many gingerbread houses available. Now, just pop to Target and you get something like this, a haunted mansion. So you don't need to work with a baker. This is a more affordable approach and you can do it yourself. So you can find a lot of these kits, you can get them online, Amazon, and create it yourself, and then you can capture the design that you want. The thing I really loved about this year's one is Adrian actually dyed all the dough black to keep in with the vintage theme. You could also do the same, use edible paint. If you take a peek at Baker's Party Shop, she's got lots of food dyes, food colorings, food paints. You can even get these golds and silvers and little stencils and add the stars. Let's walk through how to put together this dessert table. This is really the magical focal point that the kids are going to come in and see, and the excitement will build about what's going to be happening, what they're going to do. The backdrop for this vintage Halloween party, I felt really needed a paper product, an authentic vintage look product. So I went with these packs of party fans from My Mind's Eye. I actually got 2 of these because I wanted to use it as a backdrop across the entire dessert table. So one pack would have given me a great centerpiece and highlighted the gingerbread house, but I actually wanted it to extend across the length of the dessert table. So I bought 2 of these packs. Now these are super easy to use, they're very lightweight. When they come, they're folded like this, you just open them up. They have a little sticky that you remove and attach them together like that. And then they come with a paper clip that you just stick over like that, and that keeps them from falling apart. Now they also come with a string, which you can see I've already cut off. I always cut these off. I just don't like the dangly bits. So you can keep those on and hang them from the ceiling, or use those on little removable hooks, etc. if you want to. But my preference is to actually have them attached directly to the wall. To the wall, you say, yes. Now I can totally do this damage free. Here's my secret weapon. Let me get a bit closer. Blue tack. So this is a product I used to use when I was at school in New Zealand, and it hung up posters and things like that. It was brilliant. It kept my mum happy while they had a zillion posters and did not ruin the wall. And so when I first moved to the States, every time my family came over, they used to bring a stack of this with them. My supplies to last me the next 6 months or year, however long till they visited again, so that I would have enough to last for all those style parties. But now I found that you can actually just get this on Amazon. So it has arrived. It's in the United States, and see, New Zealand. And I love this stuff. It is like a putty, and it's blue. and it just attaches to the wall and comes off easy, no mess. I put it on the back of the fan just here. You don't even need very much. I'm just push, and it attaches to the wall. I can then take it off, put it back on, put it in another position, and continually move it and adjust it till I get it right, and it's temporary. So this, I find, especially when I'm styling parties on volume, I don't have to be putting up hooks and removing hooks constantly. I have a couple of big ones that I keep in the studio for hanging the larger items, but otherwise I just keep my wall hook free, and I use blue tack. So let's get started. Okay, to find the starting point of where I want to start a paper fan backdrop, I'm going to first look to the very edge of this table, the dessert table, put it in place. I'm going to raise it slightly, have it slightly hanging over the edge, and then I'm going to attach it to the wall. Okay, about there, maybe slightly lower, just about there. This is the great thing about blue tack, is that I can move and adjust, and even if I'm all the way done, I can still go back and slightly adjust. So when I first start off, I'm using my dessert table in place so that I get an idea of where I want to start, my starting point, and then I move that away so that I can get right in there and I can create the fan backdrop, and continually I move this out of the way so I can continually be walking back right where you are and looking and seeing how the fans are coming together. Now that we have our starting point, this is the very edge of the dessert table, and I'm going to be moving across and upwards, and I've got this sitting at the bottom, at the top of the dessert table. We've got the bottom of this fan. So now I'm going to add a couple of bigger ones to really start moving the fan progression there. When I'm attaching these, again, I'm using the blue tack in the middle. But for these larger fans, I'm also adding a little bit, let me just get a bit closer and show you, a little bit on the bits that go down against the wall, just to give it a little bit more security and stability. Now, when I put the fans together, I look at triangle shapes, continually working in sets of 3 as I design across the wall. So I'm going to look at something like this, because it's going point to point to point. I might actually drop this one just slightly lower because it's bigger, and that gives me a little bit, I still get my triangle, but I get a little bit more coverage down below while I'm extending upwards here. So this is where I would put my next 2 fans. Now that I have my base 3 fans, I'm going to start extending this across to the length of the dessert table. Now I'm wanting to create an angle from bottom up to top. So although it's covering this entire width, I want it angling upwards slightly. That angle against the table is going to give it some visual interest. So once this 3 is in place, I'm going to look at putting this fan in, and this is where I really start getting into my triangle designs, and I'm going from the middle point to here to create that third, and that's where I'm going to put my next fan. Now we've started off with these 4 fans. This one's slightly off center, and I'm going to put my next fan around about here. Now I'm doing that again because of my triangles. Okay, that's going to fit and make the triangle for this, and then I'll look to extend that upwards and across this way. This is giving me a really good central point.
Let's speed up this next bit of putting on the fans. As you can see, and I'm going to point out as I'm going, I'm continually working in 3s and making sure that the center point of those fans are creating a triangle every time I put them up. So I will stand back, and I'm always referencing and making sure that 3 is there. Once I got to that higher point, I was really looking to move down again to ensure that I went across the whole table. And I wanted to use the bigger fans at each end. And just like that, it's complete and we're ready for the dessert table.
And I'm starting with the black linen. Now, because you're doing this for print, don't feel that it has to fit. As you can see, mine, there's no way it covers the whole table. It's too short, but you're not going to see that in photos. So bear that in mind when you're taking photos and video for content, that it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect from every angle, only the angle you're photographing from. Over the top of my linen, I'm going to add a black spiderweb tablecloth. These are a Halloween essential for me. I have multiple in different designs. They are so versatile and make anything instantly Halloween. Not only can you use them on your tabletop, but here's a tip for you. I also use mine and hang them along the wall to create that darker haunted house vibe without having to paint my walls back. So you can still see the white through, but it really gives it a nice spooky vibe, and they're super light, so you can use a couple of tiny little removable hooks, whatever you want, and you can cover a wall. I covered this whole wall with like 3 of these, so it's also a cost-effective backdrop to use. Next, I'm going to add a paper table runner. I'm adding this to really make the table pop and draw your attention to the middle of the table where the gingerbread house is going to reside. I love this design, the boo. The black and white is really eye-catching and pairs well with the colour that we've got above the dessert table. Centerpiece for our dessert table, made by the fabulous Adrian. This is my gingerbread house and inspiration piece for the kids to look at. It's the focal point of our table. I've elevated it on a beautiful black cake stand. This one's got vintage look feet and designs around the edge, so it works in perfectly with the cake, and it's black, of course.
Let's interrupt me just for a second because I couldn't resist sharing this beautiful gingerbread house with you. Look at the face here, the nose and the eyes and the windows, the dancing skeletons and pumpkins. Adrian's even included spider webs, cats, pumpkins. Look at those stars. Then, of course, on the front, look at the detailing around the door and the ghosts. Such a great vintage look. Now back to what I was saying.
High level and moving down to a lower level, I've put the urn on a little stand, so it's about 2/3 of the way up. And on this side, I'm going to put this little guy. He's on a slightly higher cake stand so that he can balance the guy on the other side. And I put a little hat on him, so he's that little bit taller, and he fits perfectly, so I have a nice balanced table. Then each side, as we're working down, so this being my top point and down, so on this side I chose to put a grouping of 3 again. I always like to keep things in 3s or 5s or odd numbers. I'm using the patterned pumpkins, a nice stripe, and almost like a perfect vintage design with the points and the little diagonals as a grouping here, and that gives me the lower level on this side of the table. And on this side, I'm using another 2 pumpkins, but my third item here is the candy dish, the candy bowl full of candy for the kids to use on their gingerbread houses. Once I've put my core elements of the dessert table in, what I could put here are more dishes with items for the kids to decorate from. I could also put food items. So this is where you could put little bowls of popcorn, you could put juices, snacks for the kids to be eating on while they're decorating. But given it's the fall season and all kids love hot chocolate, and I found these, I couldn't resist. And I also love to display cups that match my theme. So everyone has a mug, which display beautifully on the table. So they double down as decor and something practical, and each kid can grab one of these and have hot chocolate while they're making, or maybe when they're eating, their gingerbread house. Now for this table, I'm using a paper vintage striped table runner. I really love using paper table runners or paper tablecloths with kids. The first thing is they can draw on them. So if you put a couple of pens there, they can actually keep themselves entertained with drawing. You can get versions that are colouring in, that they can colour in. And even better is at the end of the party, push everything into the centre, wrap it up, tie it up, boom, into the trash can, and you're good to go. It's such a time saver when it comes to waste. Okay, so you could also do a combo of this and add I have a boo, like a black boo runner that could go down the middle, but I prefer just the pop of orange like this. First up are our plates. So I selected a pairing of plates. I really love to work in either pairs or even thirds. My preference is to have a charger first and then a dinner and dessert plate. The layered look just really adds depth to the table. In this case, with kids especially, I'm going to avoid an extra thing to clear up, and I'm not going to do the charger, but the 2 plates works perfectly for a gingerbread decorating party. The bottom one they can use as their base plate, and this is what they'll move the house to, and then they have a decent area on that plate to put the house, decorate the house, even put sprinkles around the outside, put little gravestones. The best bit about this is they can just take this home, no trying to retrieve plates or trays from anybody, and it fits their little hands just perfectly to underneath. On top of this, I'm putting my pumpkin plate. Originally, I was going to alternate. I think I mentioned that earlier, but I absolutely love this pumpkin and the pop of orange. So he goes on top, and the great thing is he can go to the side. So when they're decorating, they also have a little plate for me to put snacks to keep them going. Little cheese sticks, little bits of popcorn, etc. We all know they're going to eat the candy, but hey. Once I have the plates out, it's time to put the napkins in. I really love having a combination of 2 napkins. I just love the look, and especially for vintage, I'm getting to capture a couple of the patterns because there's so many beautiful patterns to choose from. Besides, it's a kids' party. You can never have too many napkins. So I chose this diamond design. This is a Jollity & Co. This is from their own range. And this is My Mind's Eye with the star. And they even have the little vintage tassels. One of the things that you really see across vintage is crepe paper collars and like a little ruffle. And so I love that these napkins have this tiny little ruffle at the end, and they look beautiful together. What I do is I usually just tuck them at an angle under the table, under the plate, and then I put the other on top like this. So they're at an angle to that lower plate. Now, when you're using napkins, you can use them on the plate, you can put the cutlery on them. There's so many different options. Just play around with the design. The reason I've got these to the side in this instance is because my top plate is just perfect. I don't want anything covering it. But sometimes if you want a really elegant look, you can have that napkin down the center of the place setting. So for example, you would have this base plate, and you would have something like this with your modern cutlery and maybe a ribbon tied around it for a totally different look, more of an adult look. On top of the napkins is where I put little treats. I found these while I was out shopping. They're a vintage look clicker. Oh, they're pretty loud. And these are gonna go on top of the napkins just to the side. There's one for every child. At each place setting, we're gonna have a cup. This is for water, juices, drinks for each kid. We're going to put one here. And then I have these little cupcake holders, but we're going to use them for the kids to put some of their decorations in, so they can take a little bit from everything, including the dessert table, and have easy access to it there, so they're not constantly grabbing at everything. Now, when I set these down, I like to put them together and at an angle to the plate. I just like the aesthetic of that. My absolute preference is sets of 3. But when you have the plate kind of counts as number 1, and then you have the 2, 3 to keep your triangle look. So I'm going to put all of these out. Then I'm adding the cutlery. I have this beautiful black modern cutlery. I love the look it gives and just the contrast between the modern and the vintage. At each place setting, I'm adding a little side plate. On this, I have the icing. Always have extras of these, they seem to go through this. I have it in orange and black to keep with my theme. I have a little extra gravestone so they all get one. Then top tip, if you've got any special decorations like these, I got these from Baker's Party Shop, and they are little icing add-ons, boo, eek, ghost, owl, hat and pumpkin. Are they adorable? All in the vintage theme. Now I bought a few packs of these so they could each get one. No fights, no I want that one. They can always swap if they want two of one, and they've all got their own serving size. So put one of those little plates next to each place setting. Easy access for them to get to while they're decorating. In the center of the table, I have a little gravestone plate with RIP on it and some bats. I've added on here some little pieces of gingerbread fence and some gingerbread tombstones. These the kids can add to their gingerbread houses. I love this plate. This is a Target find last year. On top of that, some more things that they can share and decorate with. I have these cupcake wrappers that I found at the Dollar Tree, and these can be used around their houses. They've got little ghosts and gravestones. If they don't want to decorate, they can just use these instead. And on top of that, I also have this little template full of stars and some gold and silver edible glitter paint so that they can actually paint some stars on the roofs of their gingerbread houses. Next, I'm going to add the gingerbread houses. I have 4 gingerbread houses, one for each kid. My baker Adrian made these black, which I love because they go with the whole vintage theme, and pipe them with orange. They're on a baking tray and the kids can easily grab them from here. I'm going to put those on the table just next to our little gravestone. The final detail I love to keep with the theme, and these little cauldron containers I got from Michael's last year, and they have become invaluable already. These are the perfect size for holding the different decor items and treats that the kids are going to put on their houses. They're the final touch. I put 3 on either side, easy access for the kids. They can easily hand them between each other, and of course they can put their own in these little cupcake dishes.
Let's look at these tables from a whole room perspective. You can see the eating table in front of the dessert table, and now if we scan across you can see the presentation area, which is the last area, and I'm going to walk you through that now so you can get a little bit more detail on how I set that up.
Here to the side of our main party table, I have my presentation area. This is where the kids can come and show off their finished display in front of this beautiful finished gingerbread house in front of this display. We take photos there, they really get into it. Sometimes I use props and add like a witch's broom or a cat for them to play it up with. A cauldron, I've had them stand inside cauldrons before. But the main point is just capturing those memories. What age they were, what they looked like, what their little gingerbread house looked like, and how that has developed over the years. I use a very simple backdrop, something very similar, but in my color palette. So you see my very first one was all purples and blacks. The next one was the peachy colors and the blacks and whites. And this year with vintage, I have my orange, black and white. Keeping the same color palette across the different areas of the party, the 3 that we talked about, the activity area, the dessert presentation table, and then this area for the kids to take photos. Keeping that same color palette keeps the cohesiveness of the party. I also like to use some of the same elements, so you'll see the same font. The boo on this, the font that is used on that garland is the same as the boo on the runner. You'll see the stars and the moon, and they're the same vintage shape and design as the stars and moons on the tableware on the larger gingerbread house. And it's very simple for the kids to have fun in front of.
And there you have our full party set up. And now I'm taking questions. What would you like to know?